When we say that people hear your words but Allah hears your heart, we're pointing to something far deeper than a poetic line. We're describing a spiritual reality that shapes the way you should approach every hardship in your life. Most human beings, even the most sincere and well-intentioned ones, can only understand what you verbalize. They can only grasp what you choose to reveal. Your words are like a small window into a very large house. They show a glimpse, but the majority remains hidden. And the truth is, sometimes even you don't fully understand the complexity of your own emotions. Sometimes you feel something without knowing how to articulate it. Sometimes you're overwhelmed without knowing why. Sometimes the sadness isn't attached to a particular moment. It's layered, accumulated, and tangled. In those moments, expecting another human being to fully understand you is not only unrealistic, it can lead to disappointment. Allah, on the other hand, doesn't need your explanations. He doesn't need you to clarify your feelings, justify your fears, or translate your pain into neat sentences. He knows the hidden chambers of your heart better than you do. He knows the cause of every tear before it even forms, and he knows the weight of every thought before you are conscious of it. When you turn to him, you're not informing him of anything new. You're simply acknowledging that only he can hold what no one else can. This is why turning to Allah first is not simply about piety, it's about emotional survival. It's about protecting your dignity, your privacy, and your inner world. Because people, no matter how loving or compassionate, are limited. They have their own worries, their own distractions, their own fatigue, their own imperfect understanding. You may pour your heart into someone's inbox or someone's ear, but you cannot pour it into their heart. You cannot make them feel what you feel. You cannot guarantee that they will honor what you share. You cannot ensure that they will not misunderstand, judge, minimize, or even unintentionally hurt you. Human beings process your pain based on their own emotional state, their own maturity, their own world view. But Allah processes your pain based on His infinite mercy, His perfect knowledge, and His absolute wisdom. And that changes the experience entirely, because when you speak to Allah, the goal is not simply to be heard, it is to be healed. With people, speaking can lead to temporary relief, but with Allah, speaking leads to transformation. The mere act of raising your hands even before the solution arrives brings a sense of calm, because your soul recognizes that you are finally speaking to the one who actually has the power to change your situation. It's not just emotional comfort, it's spiritual alignment. Humans can sympathize, but only Allah can intervene. Humans can listen, but only Allah can rewrite your path. Humans can advise, but only Allah can guide your heart. Humans can accompany you, but only Allah can carry you. When you internalize this shift, from creation to creator, you stop expecting from people what only Allah can give. And when you stop expecting the impossible from people, you stop feeling disappointed when they fail to meet expectations they were never designed to fulfill. Psychologically, this shift is profound. When you stop outsourcing your emotional weight to others, you build resilience within yourself. You stop depending on the validation of people to feel grounded. You no longer need constant reassurance from someone's words to feel stable. Instead, your stability comes from a place that cannot be shaken. A relationship with the one who never tires of hearing you, never gets bored of your dua, never becomes frustrated by your repetition, and never fails to respond in the way that is best for you. Even his silence is a form of response, filled with wisdom that unfolds over time. And spiritually, turning to Allah first reflects tawakkul, true trust. When something hurts you, your instinctive reaction reveals your heart's attachment. Some people immediately run to a friend, a sibling, a spouse, or social media. They look for a human response before seeking a divine one. But the believer trains his heart so that the first name that comes to his tongue is Allah. The first place his heart leans towards is Allah. This doesn't mean you never seek help from people. Islam encourages seeking support, consultation, and wise counsel. But it means the emotional weight, the raw pain, the unfiltered confusion, those belong with Allah first, because He is the only one who can handle them fully. There is a unique dignity in speaking to Allah. You don't have to edit your sentences. You don't have to impress Him. You don't have to fear being misunderstood. You don't have to worry about your secrets being repeated. You don't have to mask your vulnerabilities or hide your weaknesses. You can come to Him broken, and He still loves you. You can come to Him exhausted, and He still welcomes you. You can come to Him crying, and He still honors you. Human beings show love when you're strong. Allah shows love even when you are weak. And this is why the prophets taught us, through their lives, that the purest form of emotional expression is directed toward Allah. When Prophet Yaqub said I only complain of my sorrow and grief to Allah, he wasn't denying human companionship. He was revealing where he placed his deepest pain. When Maryam cried alone under the palm tree, the Quran records her emotional collapse. But her response wasn't to run to people. Her heart turned to her Lord. When Yunus was in the belly of the whale, there was no one to hear him, but the one who hears every whisper was with him. Your life will also have moments when no one truly understands you. Moments when explaining your pain feels heavier than the pain itself. Moments when people are simply not available, not attentive, or not capable of helping. In those moments, remind your heart, the one who sees you is closer than the people sitting beside you. The one who understands you is closer than the people you love most. The one who heals you is closer than the solutions you're desperately searching for. So, speak to Allah. Speak to Him in your sujud, in your silence, in your tears, in your confusion. Speak to Him with the confidence that you are not burdening Him. Speak to Him knowing that every word is recorded, every emotion is acknowledged, and every pain is seen. Because when you speak to Allah, you are not just expressing your problems, you are positioning your heart for the solution. When we say that vulnerability with the creation weakens you, but vulnerability with the Creator strengthens you, we're speaking about a deep spiritual principle that affects the way you carry yourself, the way you respond to hardship, and the way you understand your own worth. Human vulnerability and divine vulnerability are not the same. They do not produce the same effects. They do not shape the heart in the same direction. When you open yourself to people, you expose yourself to their human limitations. When you open yourself to Allah, you expose yourself to His limitless mercy, power, and protection. Most people don't realize how much emotional energy is lost by constantly explaining themselves to the world. Every time you share your struggles with someone who cannot carry them, you dilute your strength, you drain your dignity. You begin to rely on human validation to steady yourself. And the moment your stability depends on another person's understanding, you become fragile. You become vulnerable, not in a healthy way, but in a way that exposes you to disappointment, misunderstanding, and even exploitation. No matter how close a person is to you, your friend, your spouse, your sibling, they still have their own flaws, their own emotional bandwidth, their own blind spots. They can only handle so much, and sometimes, even unintentionally, they can make your burden heavier simply because they don't know what to do with it. But when you become vulnerable with Allah, the experience is entirely different. It is, in fact, the opposite. Instead of losing strength, you gain it. Instead of feeling exposed, you feel protected. Instead of feeling dependent, you feel empowered. This is the paradox of spiritual vulnerability. The more you lower your heart before Allah, the higher Allah raises you in your own eyes and in the eyes of others. When you cry before Him, He gives you the ability to stand with dignity before people. When you admit your weakness to Him, He grants you a strength that surprises even you. When you admit your confusion to him, he gives you clarity that no human advice could have given. This is why the prophets were the strongest people emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. They weren't strong because they never felt pain. They were strong because they directed that pain to the only one capable of holding it. They didn't hide their fears or frustrations from Allah. They didn't pretend to be self-sufficient. They didn't mask their vulnerability with silence or pride. They went to Allah with their brokenness, their tears, their uncertainty. And in return, Allah gave them resilience, purpose, and inner stability. If you look closely, you'll notice a pattern in your own life. The moments you felt weakest were often the moments you put too much emotional weight on people. You expected them to respond in a certain way, to reassure you in a certain tone, to comfort you with certain words. And when they didn't, when they were distracted or indifferent or simply unable, you felt even more fragile. You felt let down, not because they were cruel, but because you expected from them something only Allah can give: emotional completion. Human beings can support you, but they cannot complete you. They can console you, but they cannot heal you. They can accompany you, but they cannot carry you. And if you rely on them too much, you unintentionally place your heart in a position where its stability becomes dependent on external factors. Factors that are inconsistent, unpredictable, or short-lived. When you become vulnerable with people too quickly, you also give them access to parts of yourself that may not be safe in their hands. Not because they are evil, but because they are human. Sometimes people unintentionally misuse your vulnerability. Sometimes they speak casually about something that is sacred to you. Sometimes they reveal your struggles in a way you didn't expect. Sometimes they judge you based on a moment of weakness. Sometimes they simply forget what you told them. And sometimes, even if they keep your secrets, your heart still feels exposed because you know a human being is holding a piece of your emotional truth. But Allah never misuses your vulnerability, never. He never exposes what you share. He never throws your fears back at you. He never judges you for admitting your weakness. He never belittles your pain. He never grows tired of your repeated prayers. In fact, the more vulnerable you are with him, the more love he shows you. The more honest you are with him, the more he strengthens you. The more you rely on him, the more he empowers you to stand firm in front of the world. Psychologically, this is profoundly transformative. When your vulnerability is directed toward Allah, you reduce the emotional dependency that leads to anxiety and insecurity. You stop waiting for people to fix you. You stop expecting them to fill your emotional gaps. You begin to realize that their role is companionship, not salvation. Their role is support, not healing. Their role is kindness, not completion. And because of this, your relationships become healthier. You stop suffocating people with your expectations. You start appreciating their help without needing it for emotional survival. You interact from a place of strength rather than desperation. Philosophically, this reminds us of the essence of Tawheed, not just in worship, but in emotional orientation. When your heart is attached to Allah, you walk through life with a quiet confidence. You are not shaken by people's opinions. You are not destabilized by their absence. You are not destroyed by their rejection. You become more grounded, more aware of your inner self, more connected to your purpose. Vulnerability with Allah anchors you. It centers you. It reminds you that your worth does not come from how people see you, but from how Allah elevates you through your sincerity. And spiritually, this is the most authentic form of servitude. When you kneel before Allah with your private fears, your hidden wounds, and your silent tears, you are living the reality of Iyyaka na'budu wa Iyyaka nasta'in. You alone we worship, and you alone we seek help from. You're not just reciting it, you're embodying it. You're aligning your heart with your faith. You're making Allah the first place you turn, not the last. You're allowing His mercy to shape your emotional world, His wisdom to shape your thinking, and His nearness to shape your resilience. And when Allah strengthens a person, no one can break them. So allow yourself to be vulnerable, but choose where that vulnerability goes. Let people see your smile, but let Allah see your tears. Let people hear your confidence, but let Allah hear your fears. Let people witness your patience, but let Allah witness your struggle. Because when your vulnerability is placed in the hands of the Creator, it doesn't break you, it builds you. There are moments in life when the weight you're carrying becomes too complex to articulate. You try to describe it, but the words feel too small, too shallow, too inaccurate. You try to open up to someone, but the language you have simply cannot capture the inner storm. This is because the heart has a language far deeper than speech, an unspoken, intuitive, internal language that no human being can fully decode. And this reality is what makes the connection with Allah utterly unique. He understands the things you cannot express, the emotions you cannot categorize, the wounds you cannot even begin to translate. He understands not only the surface of your words, but the silent meanings behind them. Think of how often you feel something without knowing why. You wake up with heaviness in your chest or restlessness in your mind, and if someone were to ask what's wrong, you'd struggle to explain. Even your own thoughts feel scattered. You know something hurts, but you don't know which part of you is hurting. You know something feels off, but you can't identify the cause. And even when you do try to talk about it, you end up simplifying it, shrinking it, or saying things you don't fully mean. Because language is limited and the heart is not. This is where most misunderstandings in human relationships come from. Not from bad intentions, but from the limits of human understanding. You might express a deep fear to someone, and they hear it like a mild concern. You might describe a wound that feels life-altering, and they respond with a sentence that feels too casual. You might try to share a struggle, and the other person unintentionally misreads it, misinterprets it, or assumes they understand it when they don't. It's not their fault. It's not your fault. It's simply the reality that the heart has depths that human comprehension cannot reach. But Allah is not limited by language, nor by your ability to articulate, nor by the clarity of your own emotions. He understands the meaning beneath your silence. He understands your pain before you can label it. He understands your confusion even when you can't separate one emotion from another. He understands the questions you are too afraid to ask. He understands the prayers you're too overwhelmed to voice. He understands the longing you hide even from yourself. And this knowledge should comfort you, because there is nothing more healing than being understood at the level of the heart. We often think we need solutions, advice, or answers, but more than anything, human beings need to be understood. And there is no one who understands you more than the one who created you. Your heart, your mind, your personality, your history, your trauma, your hopes, and your hidden battles. When you stand in salah and your chest feels tight, Allah understands the heaviness behind your posture. When you raise your hands but no words come out, Allah understands the du'a behind your silence. When you cry in sujud without knowing exactly what triggered the tears, Allah understands the meaning behind every drop. When you lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, unsure of what you're even thinking, Allah understands the tangled thoughts you haven't even processed yet. People may hear the words you choose, but Allah hears the words you can't find. This is what makes speaking to Allah the most liberating emotional experience. With people, you need to filter yourself, organize your thoughts, choose your vocabulary, and prepare yourself for the possibility that they might not fully understand. But with Allah, you don't need preparation, you don't need eloquence, you don't need structure, you don't need perfect wording. You don't even need certainty, you just need presence, you just need sincerity, You just need to turn toward him, even if you turn with confusion instead of clarity. Psychologically, this creates a powerful form of emotional regulation. When you speak to Allah, you release internal tension without fear of judgment. You process your emotions without worrying about burdening someone. You allow yourself to be honest without calculating how someone might react. And in that raw honesty, your heart begins to settle, because it finally experiences a listener who understands perfectly and responds with infinite compassion. This also explains why dua is not merely a religious act. It is an emotional necessity. It gives your heart space to express what it cannot express to people. It allows you to bring your unfiltered self before a being who already knows you better than you know yourself. It relieves the pressure of performing emotional clarity for others. It frees you from the exhausting work of explaining yourself. It lets you exist with all your imperfections, all your uncertainties, and all your inner contradictions without fear of being misunderstood. Philosophically, this is one of the most profound aspects of belief. You are understood not at the level of your speech, but at the level of your heart. You are known not by what you say, but by who you are internally. You are seen not only in your actions, but in your intentions. You are judged not by the eloquence of your expression, but by the sincerity of your struggle. And because Allah understands the heart completely, your relationship with Him becomes the safest emotional space you have in this world. Spiritually, it deepens your reliance. You begin to realize that Allah's knowledge is not distant, it is intimate. His understanding is not analytical, it is compassionate. His awareness of your pain is not observational, it is actively connected to His mercy. When you understand this, you stop rushing to be understood by people, and you start prioritizing being understood by Allah. You also stop resenting others for failing to grasp your inner world. You stop expecting perfection from human relationships. You stop taking misunderstandings personally. You stop assuming that people should be able to decode your feelings. Because you realize something essential. Allah gave the heart its language so that He could be the one to understand it fully. So when you feel overwhelmed and you can't articulate why, turn to Allah. When you feel hurt and you don't know what words to use, turn to Allah. When your heart is speaking a language too deep for human ears, turn to Allah. He is not waiting for your eloquence. He is waiting for your sincerity. He is not expecting your clarity. He is expecting your trust. And the moment you speak to Him, even without words, you will feel the first wave of peace wash over you. Because the heart that speaks to Allah never fails to be heard. There is something profoundly different between complaining to people and complaining to Allah. When you complain to people, your pain often becomes heavier. But when you complain to Allah, something remarkable happens. The pain begins to dissolve even before anything in your circumstances changes. This contrast is not accidental. It reflects a deeper truth about the nature of human interaction versus divine connection. People may listen, but they listen from the outside. Allah listens from the inside. People hear your sentences. Allah hears your soul. When you take your complaints to people, you expose your emotions to human limitation. No matter how kind or sincere someone is, their understanding has edges. They can misinterpret you. They can unintentionally invalidate your feelings. They can respond in a tone that doesn't match the depth of your struggle. They might minimize your pain simply because they cannot feel what you feel. Even those who love you may try to give advice when all you wanted was empathy. And sometimes people simply don't have the emotional space to carry what you tell them. They're overwhelmed with their own lives, their own problems, their own anxieties. That's not a flaw, it's just part of being human. But when you complain to Allah, none of these limitations exist. Allah is not overwhelmed. He is not distracted. He is not emotionally unavailable. He does not misinterpret, misunderstand, or misread you. He knows every hidden layer of your pain, every unspoken thought, every detail of what led to that moment. He knows your past, your triggers, your traumas, your fears, even the things you cannot explain to yourself. He knows them fully. So when you speak to him, you experience something you cannot find elsewhere. Absolute understanding. There is also a psychological dimension to this. When you complain to people, you subconsciously create expectations of compassion, expectations of support, expectations of certain responses. And when these expectations aren't met, you feel twice the pain, once from the original problem and once from the disappointment of the human reaction. This is why complaining to people often leaves you feeling even more emotionally drained than before. But when you complain to Allah, you enter a space with no expectations except the certainty that you are being heard. There is no fear of judgment, no pressure to phrase your sentences perfectly, no concern about being misunderstood. You're not performing vulnerability, you're experiencing it in its purest form. And because Allah's response is not bound by human limitations, complaining to him becomes a form of emotional release rather than emotional risk. Look at Prophet Yaqub, who said, I only complain of my sorrow and grief to Allah. He didn't say that because he lacked loving family around him. He had children, he had companions, he had people who cared, but he understood something fundamental. Human compassion can support you, but it cannot heal you. Only Allah can take pain and transform it into wisdom, patience, and inner strength. Only Allah can turn grief into growth. Only Allah can turn brokenness into elevation. And this is important. Complaining to Allah isn't about weakness. It's about clarity. It's about placing your heart in the right place, aligning your emotions with the one who can handle them completely. When you complain to people, your pain expands. When you complain to Allah, your pain transforms. On the philosophical level, complaining to Allah acknowledges the reality that everything happening to you carries meaning, purpose, and divine intentionality. When you turn to Allah, even your complaints become an act of faith. You're saying, Ya Allah, I know you see me, I know you understand me, I know you have a plan, but right now it hurts and I need you. In that moment, when your pain meets your faith, is the moment your heart begins to heal. On the psychological level, this form of expression becomes a grounding tool. You're processing your emotions in the safest possible space. You're allowing your heart to unload without fear of consequences. You're giving yourself permission to feel, to express, to be honest without worrying about how someone else will interpret it. That's why after speaking to Allah, even if nothing external changes, you feel lighter, you feel steadier. You feel like you can breathe again, your inside shift. On the spiritual level, complaining to Allah is one of the most sincere forms of worship. Not because you are expressing gratitude, but because you are expressing vulnerability. Worship isn't just about strength, it's about authenticity. And nothing is more authentic than turning to Allah in your moments of weakness, acknowledging that you cannot carry the burden alone. This is not a failure. In fact, it is the very foundation of faith, recognizing your dependence on the one who is never dependent on you. Complaining to people often leads to frustration, gossip, resentment, or emotional exhaustion. Complaining to Allah leads to peace, healing, clarity, and subtle divine intervention. Sometimes the help comes in the form of a solution. Sometimes it comes in the form of a new perspective. Sometimes it comes in the form of patience. And sometimes the help comes simply by the burden being lifted from your chest. What's most beautiful is that Allah never gets tired of hearing you. People may listen today and avoid you tomorrow. They may comfort you once and feel overwhelmed the next time. They may sympathize initially but eventually get exhausted by the repetition of your struggles. But Allah never says, "You already told me this." He never says, "Why are you crying again?" He never says, "I have other things to focus on." Instead, he invites you repeatedly, lovingly, gently. Asterisk, call upon me, speak to me. Tell me what's in your heart. Asterisk, and the more you complain to him, the more your reliance deepens, the more your trust grows, the more your faith stabilizes. You begin to see that the pathway out of your hardship isn't in people, it's in your connection with the one who controls people, circumstances, and outcomes. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, remember this. Your heart was not designed to be carried by human beings. It was designed to find peace in the remembrance and nearness of Allah. When you complain to him, you're not venting, you're aligning. You're not escaping, you're returning. You're not breaking down. You're opening up to the one who can rebuild you stronger. There is a danger we rarely acknowledge. When we constantly share our struggles with people, we begin to shape our identity around those struggles. Without realizing it, we start repeating our pain so frequently that it becomes a part of how we define ourselves. We become the person who is always going through something, the person whose conversations revolve around problems, fears, complaints, and disappointments. And the more we focus on our wounds in front of people, the more those wounds harden into our sense of self. But when you confide in Allah instead, you protect yourself from becoming trapped in a narrative of victimhood. You protect your identity from being built on weakness, and instead allow it to be shaped by resilience, faith, and inner dignity. Human beings are profoundly influenced by the stories they tell themselves and others. When you talk about a hardship over and over, you reinforce it in your mind. You rehearse the pain, relive the frustration, re-experience the sadness. You give it space to grow. And because people react, comment, or respond based on what you share, you start seeing yourself through their reactions. You start becoming the version of yourself that you've presented. This is why constant venting to people can become psychologically corrosive. You end up magnifying your problems rather than processing them. You become more aware of what's wrong than what's right. You start expecting sympathy rather than seeking strength. But when you take your struggles to Allah, something different happens. You release the pain without attaching your identity to it. You express what hurts without letting it define who you are. You cleanse your heart rather than reinforcing the wound. Speaking to Allah is like pouring water over burning coals. It calms, cools, and extinguishes, rather than feeding the flame. And there is something deeply dignifying about this. When you entrust your deepest struggles to Allah instead of the world, you are reclaiming authorship over your own narrative. You are saying, my pain is real, but it does not own me. My struggle is heavy, but it doesn't define me. My weakness is present, but it is not who I am. You begin to see yourself not as a wounded person, but as a person being held, guided, and strengthened by Allah. That shift changes everything. Psychologically, it allows you to focus on solutions rather than on storytelling. Because when you turn to Allah, you're not seeking validation. You're seeking direction. You're not looking for someone to confirm your pain. You're asking for the one who can heal it. And he responds not with empty comfort, but with clarity, peace, and new perspective. You walk away from that moment of prayer with more stability than when you entered it. Not because your circumstances changed, but because you changed in the presence of the one who listens. Spiritually, taking your struggles to Allah preserves your sincerity. You don't fall into the trap of sharing your difficulties for attention, sympathy, or validation. Your pain remains between you and the one who rewards every tear, every moment of patience, every whispered prayer. You protect your good deeds, your inner sincerity, and the purity of your relationship with him. And socially, it strengthens your dignity. You no longer walk through the world wearing your wounds on your sleeve. You carry yourself with quiet confidence, not because your life is perfect, but because you are anchored in something deeper. People see strength in you, not because you are unbroken, but because you are supported by a source far greater than anything they can see. So, be mindful of the story you tell the world. Be mindful of how often you repeat your struggles in front of people. Not every pain needs an audience. Some pains are meant to be healed in sujud, not in conversation. Some struggles are meant to elevate you, not define you. And some wounds are meant to be whispered only to the one who can turn them into wisdom. Here is your *** 2000 word expansion of key point 6***, written in the exact tone, flow, style, and intellectual depth you requested. It continues seamlessly from the previous points and concludes with a powerful, reflective closing. When a believer finally arrives at that stage where they begin to guard their heart from unnecessary exposure, where they choose carefully who gains access to their inner world, something profound begins to take place within them. They start recognizing that their emotional and spiritual energy is not an infinite resource to be poured into every conversation or every person who happens to ask, "What's wrong?" They begin to realize that healing and growth require not only reflection, not only honesty, but also privacy, privacy of the soul, privacy of the pain, privacy of the journey. And this realization is not rooted in arrogance or coldness. It is rooted in wisdom. It is rooted in the understanding that just as the body has a skin to protect it from harm, the heart also requires a membrane of discretion. Not every situation deserves a confession. Not every person deserves access. And not every thought deserves to be spoken aloud. When you choose to guard your heart, you are not isolating yourself. You are protecting yourself. You are preserving your emotional dignity. Because the truth is, your struggles are sacred. They shape you, they refine you, they soften your character, and they deepen your relationship with Allah. Why should sacred things be treated casually? Why should intimate wounds be handled recklessly? If someone had a valuable jewel, they would not leave it on the street for people to pick up, examine, comment on, gossip about, or judge. Yet many people do exactly that with their emotional vulnerabilities. They throw their heart onto the table of public opinion, hoping someone will understand, hoping someone will care, hoping someone will validate them. And when that response does not come, or worse, when their vulnerabilities are used against them, they feel betrayed. But the betrayal did not begin with the people. It began with a misplaced trust. When you guard your heart, you accept that not everyone in your life has the emotional maturity to hold space for your struggles. Some people listen only to respond. Some listen only to feel superior. Some listen only to gather information. And some listen with sincerity, but their sincerity does not equate to capacity. A sincere person may still lack wisdom. A kind person may still lack discretion. A loving person may still lack the spiritual grounding needed to guide you. This is why Allah must always be first. Because when you confide in Allah, you never have to worry about capacity, or judgment, or gossip, or misunderstanding. His nature is mercy. His listening is perfect. His confidentiality is absolute. Guarding your heart means you recognize the psychological reality that excessive sharing can dilute your strength. When you keep repeating your pain to people, you reopen the wound again and again until healing becomes slow. But when you speak to Allah, you do not reopen the wound. You purify it. You transform it. You align it with your purpose. You elevate it from emotional chaos to spiritual clarity. You turn something messy into something meaningful. And part of guarding your heart is learning the difference between processing and unloading. Processing means you are seeking understanding and direction. Unloading means you simply want someone else to carry what you do not want to carry. People can help you process depending on who they are, but no one can carry your burdens the way Allah can. People may sit with you during difficulty, but they cannot remove the hardship. They cannot change destiny. They cannot rewrite the decree. Their empathy can soothe you, but it cannot save you. Their presence can comfort you, but it cannot cure you. Only Allah can alter the course of your life in a way that gives meaning to everything you are enduring. Guarding your heart also means limiting how much you think about how others perceive you. When you overshare, you unintentionally allow people to shape the narrative of your life. You allow them to form opinions about your resilience, your faith, your emotional capacity, and even your intentions based on incomplete information. This is why many wise people throughout history lived with a certain degree of quiet mystery, not because they were secretive, but because they understood that dignity thrives in privacy, strength thrives in silence, and spiritual growth thrives when the heart is not constantly seeking validation from human beings. If you want to grow spiritually, you must create inner space. And that inner space is suffocated when you constantly look outward. When the heart becomes dependent on people's reactions, it becomes too fragile. It begins to fluctuate with every comment, every expression, every assumption. But when your heart depends on Allah, it stabilizes. It becomes anchored. It becomes rooted in a profound stillness that no opinion can shake. There is a remarkable psychological transformation that takes place when a person guards their heart properly. They stop reacting to negativity with emotional impulsiveness. They stop feeling the need to justify themselves. They stop expecting people to understand. They gain a quiet confidence, a deep internal peace, a subtle but powerful sense of self grounded in faith rather than approval. And this transformation allows them to navigate the world with dignity, dignity in speech, dignity in behavior, dignity in relationships. They do not need to broadcast their struggles because they trust that Allah sees. They do not need to explain their pain because they trust that Allah knows. They do not need to seek constant reassurance because they trust that Allah is near. And this is the heart of the matter. Only Allah truly knows you. Only Allah knows the depths of your thoughts, the layers of your wounds, the weight of your fears, and the sincerity of your intentions. People see your actions. Allah sees your soul. People hear your words. Allah hears your heartbeat. People witness your struggles. Allah witnesses the battle that takes place in your mind every day. Why, then, should your deepest struggles be directed towards people, before being directed toward the one who already knows everything about you before you even speak? Guarding your heart does not mean you become emotionally distant. It means you become spiritually prioritized. You still love, you still care, you still connect, but you do so with wisdom. You do not give your heart to anyone who has not earned the privilege. You do not reveal your vulnerabilities to those who have not demonstrated maturity. You do not rely on people in ways that they were never designed to carry. Instead, you build a foundation where Allah is the primary confidant, and people are secondary participants. And when relationships are built on that foundation, they become healthier, more balanced, more meaningful. You begin to understand that the people around you are not placed in your life to fix you. They are placed in your life to support you. And support is valuable, but it is not divine. Support can hold your hand, but it cannot hold your destiny. Support can empathize with your pain, but it cannot eliminate the decree. Support can remind you of your strength, but it cannot give you strength. Only Allah can do that. Only Allah can place tranquility in the heart. Only Allah can strengthen the inner core of your being in moments where you feel you are collapsing. And only Allah can turn your private struggles into spiritual elevation. So you guard your heart not to become hard, but to become wise. You guard it not to cut people out, but to place Allah where He belongs, at the center of your emotional life. And when Allah is at the center, everything else falls into proper alignment. Your relationships become healthier. Your emotions become calmer. Your decisions become clearer. Your purpose becomes stronger. You begin to walk through life with a quiet certainty that no matter what happens around you, you are anchored from within. And that lessons from this caress, this inner drones stabilization ultimately becomes the greatest protection a person can have. Because life will shake you, people will disappoint you, circumstances will test you, your own mind will whisper doubts and fears. But if your heart is guarded with trust in Allah, if your emotional world is grounded in divine connection, then nothing external can destroy you internally. Hardships may bend you, but they cannot break you. Pain may wound you, but it cannot define you. Loneliness may surround you, but it cannot consume you. For a heart guarded by Allah is a heart that remains unshaken even in the storms of life. And so, the wisdom is simple but transformative. Protect your heart, confide less in people, confide more in Allah. Make your conversations with Him more detailed than your conversations with the world. Make your tears fall for Him more than they fall for people. Let your deepest concerns rise toward the heavens before they are spoken to the earth. Because at the end of the day, what you share with people may comfort you temporarily, but what you share with Allah will transform you permanently. And sometimes, transformation is worth far more than comfort.